Last year, I helped move $1.1 million into this retirement strategy. Its sales are up just about 100% since 2021. It's not for everyone, but here's why. First and foremost, the fixed index annuity in 2021 did about $63.7 billion in business. In 2024, did $126.9 billion. So just about 100% there. And the only reason, the only main or valid reason that anyone is doing this is for peace of mind. The reason being, number one, they can either guarantee their income, or number two, they can get probably less growth than they would in the market. However, when the market goes down, they wouldn't have to worry about losing due to any sort of market downturn or market volatility because they have what is called a floor. So if the market does negative 10% and you were linked to the S&P 500, you hit your floor of 0%. You don't get the negative 10 because you had a floor of 0. Now, if you look up fixed index annuities online, you're going to get all sorts of different results. A lot of positive, a lot of negative, maybe even mostly negative, or I would say mostly used to be negative. That's kind of changing. Dave Ramsey, for example, this is his video a couple of years ago on clarifying what a fixed index annuity is. He's very anti-fixed index annuities, at least for the most part, as far as I'm concerned. I could be a little wrong there, but I was just looking through a couple here. First, comment sections on these type of videos, just scrolling through, are very negative on his negative stance. Meaning that even though he's kind of posing it as a thing that's fee heavy and have high commissions, a lot of retirees, even though they understand that and maybe aren't even saying that that's necessarily wrong, we're very critical of that. So just kind of scrolling down, there's people talking about that there's no fee options and that some of his explanations were wrong. And then I also wanted to put, this is another YouTuber that I watch occasionally, recommend his stuff, James Knoll. He's a CFP, and he put, should I fund my retirement needs by purchasing an annuity? And he was going over a specific person's situation. He kind of talked about how a lot of people are all for annuities or very against annuities, and there's not really a middle ground, but that there should be. And he kind of goes through like, hey, here are the things that they provide, here are the things that they don't, and here's how it's different for different people's situations. Anyway, I thought it was very interesting in the comments, just looking at explanations from a lot of people who purchased annuities themselves and them saying why they actually did this. I think this is so important. That's why I wanted to show it. But this person here said, I bought an annuity years ago for the fixed income it will provide, coupled with Social Security. I have a solid fixed income regardless of what the market does to my other investments. That's the main thing there. Regardless of what the market does, that's why he did it. This next person says it depends on the personalities of the retiree. So someone who values security over market volatility, this might serve them better. If that doesn't align with your situation and you're really not concerned about market volatility, you're willing to go up and down with the market, well then, annuities might not be a great option for you. This person says I went with having the hybrid half of my IRA, part of it into a fixed annuity for the guarantees and the guaranteed income, and the other half in the market to cover inflation, get more gains, and have that be more aggressive. Why did this person do that? Peace of mind and to alleviate the stress of money management. He understands he might not get as high of a return doing it this way, but that's why this person says, hey, as a saving overachiever, it can be difficult to transition from the accumulation phase to the enjoy it phase of life. An annuity can be a great crutch to convert from savings into freedoms. So it may not be the best financial decision, especially in terms of returns, this person's saying, but converting a portion into a forced income stream can be a great quality of life decision. And it goes on and on and on. So those are the reasons why people are doing them. Now let's get into, there's 3 real main setups that you can do with a fixed index annuity. First is going to be growth, as we kind of alluded to there before. Second is going to be structuring it for income. And third is going to be kind of in between there, keeping your options open. So first, growth. You are going to use a strategy called indexing. And that is with options. So I want to pull up here. I looked up how does indexing with options work, and it says an index call option allows for unlimited profit potential, while the downside loss is limited to the premium paid for the call option. Now it's going to look a little bit different with the strategy of indexing In a fixed indexed annuity, there actually is going to be a limit to how much you can earn, and then the downside is going to be just the cost of the options. And once I kind of explain how that works here in a second, you'll see that if you had $100,000 in an account and you were getting credited interest, it's only the interest you're buying the options with. So that's what they mean when they say your floor is 0%, because you don't lose any of the 100,000, you only lose the cost of the option, which was just the interest. So let's kind of get into that here and hang with me. So in a fixed index annuity, you have money that you put into a policy here. That's this right here. You are then going to get credited interest on that money from the insurance company. You buy options with the interest, you get credited a gain, and it repeats. So this is how the growth side of things work. Even if you are setting it up for income, this is still how your death benefit grows. But for the people who are structuring this for growth and are more concerned with the money continuing to grow and having the protection from the downsides as opposed to the guaranteed income, this is very important. So how they get the interest first is because, well, when we put money into an insurance company or a bank, they are going to take that money. So here's us putting the money into the insurance company here. Then the insurance company is going to invest that money. That's this right here. Same thing with a bank. They are going to earn, after putting it in things like bonds, loans, let's say 5%. This is just a hypothetical. But in the case of an insurance company, they're going to keep maybe around 1% and then give you around 4%. Again, this is going to vary from company to company and product to product, but just to get the point across here. Well, when they give you the 4% and the 1% is their profit, and that's how they're going to pay their overhead, and the rest goes back to the policyholder. Now, from there, if you had $100,000 in a policy and you were getting 4% interest on that money, that means you were getting $4,000. In a fixed indexed annuity, it also works the same with an indexed universal life insurance policy that's maximum funded, but the interest that you get, so that $4,000, is used to buy what are called call options. Now here is how those work, and here's kind of the whole idea behind this, and how, in the end of things, it's kind of looks like, hey, you have this upside potential without being able to lose. Here's how this actually works when you break it apart. So if you had a home, for example, that was worth $100,000, and I am interested in buying that home, but I don't want to buy it today, I want to buy it a year from today. So let's say I come up to you and I say, hey, you know what? I want to buy this home a year from today. However, I am worried that if the home skyrockets in value and goes up to $130,000, that might be a little bit out of my price range. So what I would like to do is I would like to purchase the decision to buy it for the price it is today, $100,000, a year from today. Is that okay with you? So if you accepted, I would have to pay you a fee. In this case, it's the cost of the options. So it's that $4,000. Now let's say 1 year later, the value of the home went up to $120,000. Well, I have the option to buy this home for $100,000. So am I going to buy it for $100 or $120? Of course, I'm going to buy it for the cheaper amount. I just bought the home for $100, but the home is worth $120,000. So technically, if I sold this home right after I bought it, I would have just made $20,000. However, I never actually risked my initial $100,000. If the home went down in value to $80,000, I still have the option to buy it for $100, but I also can just not exercise that option, and I could just buy it for $80, and I still have my $20,000 on the side. So regardless of what happens to the value of the home, I can't lose my $100,000 due to the home going down in value. When the home goes up in value, I'm able to make a gain because I buy it for that cheaper amount, the $100,000, and it's now worth $120,000. When it goes down in value, I can buy it for the cheaper amount and have the extra money there on the side. This is how it works when you're indexing to an index or linking to an index, like the S&P 500. Same thing. So if the S&P 500 is at 5,000 points and I pay that $4,000 options budget, and 1 year later, it's at $5,500, so it's gone up 10%. I have the option to buy it at $5,000, even though it's worth $5,500. If I did a little quick buy sell, kind of picture that, if you will, I just bought it, I sold it right away at $5,500, even though I bought it at $5,000. I just made 10% of my money without ever risking my principal. If the S&P 500 goes down 40 or to 4,000, we'll say, so down 20%, I don't have to exercise that option and buy it for 5,000, even though it's only worth 4,000. So in that case, I don't exercise the option. I still have my 100,000, where if I was in the market, I would have lost 20% or $20,000. That is how indexing works. Now, on top of that, once you actually get the gain, you are going to repeat the process over and over again. So if I had $100,000 and I linked to an index and I made a 10% gain, like the S&P 500 example where it went from 5,000 to 5,500, I now have a 10% gain, so I have 110,000. Now this is the money that's going to start to get credited interest. So the insurance company gives me 4%. Obviously this can vary. I kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. But let's say now instead of the 4,000, they're going to give me 4,400 in interest. I'm going to buy options with that 4,400, and the cycle's going to repeat. So if I bought options with the $4,400 on the new S&P 500 value that is $5,500, if it goes up in value to, let's say, 6,000, I'm going to make a gain and I'm going to lock that in. If the S&P 500 goes down right back to 5,000, here's the glory of this, is I don't actually lose the 10,000 that I gained last year. I actually locked those in. So even though the market went up to 5,500 and right back down to 5,000, I still made a 10% gain over those 2 years. Well, if I was in the market, I would have netted a 0% gain. Now, over the long haul, and I can't stress this enough, and hopefully you got the points kind of looking at those comments at the beginning, in the long run, over the course of, let's say, 30 years, it's very, very, very probable that the market is going to outperform this strategy. Especially if you have a 10% cap and a 0% floor, the market is just likely to outperform this over that time span. But that's not why people are getting into, or at least it's not why people should be getting into the strategy of a fixed index annuity, especially for growth. It should more so be for that peace of mind and the guarantees of not losing due to market downturns because of the floor that's sitting there at the bottom, or at 0%. So that is how the growth fixed index annuities work. That's how your money is actually growing inside of a policy. Now there's also fixed index annuities that are set up for income. That means when you kind of say from the very beginning that, hey, I just want to turn this into income either immediately or in the future, companies are going to be able to offer you better benefits to get you a higher amount of income, as opposed to just getting some more growth, and you're going to actually sacrifice some of that growth to get more benefits on the income side. Again, it depends on your goals, what structure you want to go with, but if it's specifically for income, here's a couple examples. Here is a 56-year-old female with money post-tax dollars. So all of this money has already had taxes paid on it, and they put in $275,000. If they did that, immediately they would be able to guarantee for the rest of their life $17.5, almost $1,000 for the rest of their life into perpetuity. Now this would not adjust for inflation over time, so it would remain at that $17.5 thousand. That's why this is generally a strategy that you're going to couple with some other things, or it's not going to be your entire strategy, but a part of a bigger strategy. You can see though, if she deferred this out instead of taking it right away, 1, 2, even 10 years down the line, she's going to be able to get much higher guarantees for how much income she could take. Another example here, this is a 66 and a 65-year-old taking joint income, which means if one of them passes away early, the other would continue to receive this income into perpetuity. If they put in $311,000, they would be able to receive $21.3 thousand guaranteed for the rest of their life. That would continue to increase after 10 years. Here, for example, they have around $49,000 they could take forever. And this is because since they're much older than the last example, they're going to get higher guarantees in terms of how much income they can actually pull for the rest of their life. And both of these policies, and most, not all, but have what is called an enhanced income benefit rider, and it could be called something else with different products and companies. But that is that if you cannot perform 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, and you can prove that, that is things like bathing, getting dressed. So it's not long-term care insurance, but if you cannot perform 2 of those 6 activities of daily living, then your income can double for usually up to 5 years, if that's the case, and that can help with that. Again, it's not long-term care insurance, so just want to add that caveat there and make sure that's very clear and understood. But that's another benefit. And then lastly, just to show you some of the benefits that you can get when you tell them from the very beginning that you're setting this up for income. You can see here, this is just an example of one product with one company, but they're able to give you on the money you put in. So let's say it was $100,000. They give you a 30% bonus right away. So it goes from 100 to 130,000. And then they guarantee that's going to increase by 8%, simple interest, not compound, a year for 10 years until you actually start to take income. And then from that number, they'll give you a certain percentage, depending on how old you are, that you can take from that number guaranteed for the rest of your life. Maybe it's 4%, maybe it's 6%, depends on your age. But the point is here, and while this is totally going to hurt the growth side of things in terms of guarantees for the income, if you want to set it up this way, there are great options there. The third is just the options option, which I kind of mentioned before. So you're going to get some less guarantees in terms of the income, but you'll have a little bit more guarantees in terms of growth, or at least more than if you set it up for just income, but less than if you set it up fully for growth. Lastly, before we wrap up, I want to go over some of the pros and cons really quickly. And if you've made it this far, please do like the video. Helps me out. I try to be unbiased in these videos and just kind of present the facts, present the truth about the products, and let you make your own decision. So please do like the video. It helps out, and let's get into the pros and cons. So first, the cons, or at least the main ones that people tend to make or point out, are fees can be a thing if you add in different riders. There's also fee-free products, so if this is a big con or concern of yours, you don't have to have fees. Surrender charges and a lockup period. So if you're putting money in for growth, for example, there's going to be a surrender schedule, which basically that can vary from product to product and company to company. But let's say it's 10 years. If you try and pull out more than whatever the free withdrawal amount is, say 10%, you're going to be penalized for doing that. So if you have $100,000 in there and you want to pull out $10,000, with most products, you're going to be able to do that with no penalties. If you try and pull out $20,000 on the second half, the other $10,000, you would have to usually pay some sort of surrender charge or penalties for that. So the money's getting locked up. Limited access to the money, I went over that. Company could go under. The insurance company technically could go under. If that happens, there is no FDIC insurance, for example, with insurance companies. Go with a good company. Hopefully this shouldn't be a problem. Cap rates can decrease. So if you have that S&P 500 example where the caps are 10%, the insurance company can decrease caps over time. So they can go from 10 to 8, and then you're, next thing you know, 20 years into the policy, and caps are 5%. If that's the case, not a good thing. Want to make sure you go with a company that has a good track record of not lowering caps, especially if you're setting this up for growth. Some pros then are just the guarantees. You're doing this for peace of mind. Really no other reason. That's the biggest thing. It's just about having that income there, or having the money safe for market downturns, and taking that piece, that extra energy that you're going to have, and exerting it towards your lifestyle, and making sure that you can focus your energy in those later years of your life towards the things that truly matter most to you. Make sure you pick a good company. I'm in over that. Make sure you have the appropriate expectations. You're not doing this to try and hit home runs. It's just for the guarantees. And a lot of people will try and guarantee a baseline with a fixed index annuity. I went over that, like with the IRA. One of the comments the guy made was he kind of had a baseline of, hey, this is the amount of guaranteed income I have. The rest I'm going to have in the stock market. That's a strategy that you can use. If you want to opt out of market volatility, everything that's going on right now, for example, with Trump's tariffs, if you want to simplify things, then fixed index annuities might be a good thing to consider. Otherwise, perhaps not for you. But that is exactly why people are doing it. Hopefully getting the perspective and seeing what actual people who purchased them had to say was helpful. If you enjoyed the video. If it was helpful, please do subscribe. I release videos 3 times a week. I also do one live stream once a week going into all things retirement, different strategies like this. Subscribe, and I will see you in a future video. Bye-bye.